contrary to a lot of popular opinion, for the most part, people in uniform listen to the civilian leadership in the Pentagon, and that's not wholly across the board. There's a lot of the agencies. It's just kind of mildly interesting what the head of that agency really wants to do. So the military has an opportunity, or it has the ability to change itself, and to change rapidly in ways that other organizations cannot. The second part of the question about how do we brief up the new administration, that's really a good question. I don't know how that's going to work. A lot of it will depend on the administration when they come in. A lot of that will depend on the transition. There currently is a transition team. There's transition strategy in OSD and in the Joint Staff to transition from one administration to another. The Joint Staff transition team it's really the chairman's transition team is very active, and is putting together from the joint perspective the kinds of issues that they would want the new administration to be aware of. And the chairman's role is giving the best military advice to the leadership, to the NCA. So I think part of that is going to be determined by how they how they set the stage for that transition. Although having said that, it could just be sort of an Oklahoma land rush to the SecDef's office. Although I don't suspect that that'll be the case, but it could be. So.
We, like the Marine Corps, stand down our office in between QDRs. So the office I have, I found out the good news that I was going to be leading the Navy's QDR effort, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, and all my 1- and 2-star buddies were very quick to congratulate me, because that meant they didn't get it. But we started standing up the office, and we're getting pretty close to fully there now. We expect a couple dozen people. But we've been given some tasks outside of QDR, so it may sound like it's a little large, but we have a couple other beasts we have to feed as well. So that detracts from the people that are focused strictly on QDR. I too think we will probably continue, or we will keep the office manned in the future, and I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is QDR implementation is becoming, as QDR does more, implementation after the fact is becoming more important. Second thing is roles and missions. The groups, I think most of our groups do roles and missions as well, and with roles and missions coming, well, it's going on now, but it'll go in 2011, 2015, so it'll be in the middle year between QDR. So you would have to man up something to do that. So I think that'll be enough reason to keep an office going full time. It probably won't go at the same level of manning in those interim years, but I think it will continue for us. And then to get at the civilian leadership question, I agree with what Rooster said. I think it's being set up by the chairman, and what I think the chairman's trying to do is give the people that come in the ability to do their job early on. And so what that is what are the major situations around the world, Iraq, Afghanistan, and others, and so I think the service equities are probably less important to those individuals than getting smart on those things. And I think we'll probably just respond to the demand signal as it comes for, hey, Navy, what do you do? Air Force, what do you do, etc. Thank you.
Just add a couple of points to what I mentioned. I think I left out a key piece. We will, unless the Air Force changed its policy, there was a policy memo that came out about, I think, 2.5 years ago, Tom, which stood up the QDR office in perpetuity, and we again raise our manpower up as QDR builds up, and we'll ramp it back down probably in about another 1.5 years. But as Admiral Burke was saying, there's so many things now that are connective tissue to QDR. You need that body of expertise in what I'll call the off years. There's studies that come out after that are required as a result of QDR. There's the implementation of QDR issues. There are preliminary studies for the next QDR. For example, we are now working the mobility capability and requirements study in advance of the next QDR. That's playing out now, so it's sort of ramping up for the next 6 months or so. And I think in my current job, Director of Strategic Planning, I'll probably wind up, or my replacement will wind up being sort of the dual-hatted interim off-cycle QDR chief. And then as we're doing now, Major General Hunt is coming in to be the two-star to manage QDR this cycle. And then when he leaves, it'll probably fall back to my job dual-hatted. But that's conjecture on my part. It's really up to senior Air Force leadership.
The Army stands up or has a permanent QDR office in the off cycle, but it's very small. It's 3-4 people, and it remains engaged, following, pretty much as Mark said, following studies and monitoring the execution. We're in the ramp-up phase right now. I mean, we're 10 personnel on our way to 15 or 16, and I say that because we just had one guy pop on orders to go to Afghanistan in January, so everybody pulls their share of the load, but we'll matrix across the staff then for additional support and assistance. With regard to transition, the OSD is in the lead, and the Joint Staff is also in support and in the lead. I think one of the characteristics we'll see with this transition is, as soon as we know who the team is on the 4th or the 5th, based on hanging chads, there will probably be a transition team in the building. And they will be engaged, and they will probably walk in the door, number one, with a handful of questions and put the other hand out and probably take some information that's been prepared through the Joint Staff and the OSD process to get them up to speed as rapidly as possible. Because the realization is that the nation is at war and we're engaged, and it cannot be a slow process. One of the other aspects is, though, it's the confirmation process of the new administration. And historically, it takes time. So we may get our Secretary of Defense, we may get our Secretary of State, but all those assistant secretaries and undersecretaries, if you look back when the Bush administration came in, 2001, it was still October, and we were confirming people to become assistants and unders. So it takes time to get through the process.
Before we get off this, just a quick note on what Fran just said. Historically, the transition folks that come in November, right after the election, they don't last. They historically come in and they are kind of keeping the seat warm until they can get the appointees in place. And historically, too, beginning back as far as Carter, whoever the Secretary of Defense has been, with the exception of John Tower, who never made it to confirmation because of some dalliances in the past, they normally are nominated sometime around Christmas, and they usually are confirmed shortly after